right, round two of the day. More LA Phil. We're very happy to have back with us again this summer the wonderful, amazing orchestral player, chamber player, and soloist Robert deMain.
I'm saying welcome to a place that I just got to. So thank you for the welcome. And why don't we just go ahead and take it away. Anastasia, all right. Are you going to play first note of Elgar?
just about a week.
Oh, okay. So you're actually, are you thinking about coming to school out here, or what are your plans?
It's a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, probably you have a lot going for you as a cellist. And you're a senior in high school right now? That's great. And who's your teacher?
Julia Slover
At
MSU.
Okay.
Yeah.
MSU's in Bozeman. Yeah, the University of Montana's in Missoula, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Terrific. So, have you played the rest of the concerto yet? Okay, but just for today.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the tempos might be just a little bit off. I think, who was it? Was it Wagner who said 99% of an interpretation is finding the right tempo. You need to find a tempo that makes it sort of leave the ground. And in the beginning, it's fine. The adagio might be a little bit on the slow side, but then you want to bump the tempo up considerably for the rest of the movement. It should never feel 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That figure that we have so often in this case, I would say it's like a British Sicilian, that rhythm that pervades almost all of that type of Italian music. That kind of gentle rocking sound. I wonder, we'll go back to the beginning in a second, but I want to make sure I don't forget. Could you hear the A one more time? That was a little sharp, but whatever. We'll deal. When you reach, play once for me, only playing duples. Instead of the triplet rhythm, just by yourself once. Good. Now, with that in mind, right now I think you've been sort of interpretively like limiting yourself to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's also at such a kind of deliberate tempo that I want a little bit of more motion sort of baked into the phrasing. And so what I'm demonstrating here is that now if we speed it up, I'm going to be way sharp to the piano. So let's see. You notice I'm playing on this side or that side of the 3 at times. It's not perfectly 1, 2, 3. It's not designed to be that way. As long as the big bouncing ball is happening, then this rhythm has a little bit more sway and a little bit more freedom. Do you know this? All violinists are going to know that. What is that piece? Right, the Frank Sinatra, right? It's the same idea there. Okay? I really should fix this. Can I have the A? Bear with me. I just put these really cheap strings on my cello as an experiment. Okay, that's closer at least. Now, so if you were to take this this section, just right from the tutti where no faster than that. That's good though. Keep going. Da, da, da. up the time on the back end of it. So you have to keep track. You can't just change the overall pulse if you do a little rubato like that. But it is a little bit sing-songy if you... Now, a couple other things. What I'd like to see more of in your playing is more left-hand articulation. You seem to just kind of gingerly place your fingers down, okay? You need to be quite a bit more assertive, I think. No matter what fingering you do you hear that? The popping, I call it the snap, crackle, pop. Now in guitar language, it's called hammer-ons and pull-offs. So the hammer-on and the pull-offs are just a left-hand pizzicato, okay? And then you've got shifting and all the other things that how to get from one note or one position to the next. So can you show me just whatever your fingering is, just like each finger, when you put the first finger down, you lift the others, and then you let the hand just sort of relax into itself. It's like one button goes down, the others go up. You follow what I'm saying? You never are just beholden to like one static position and holding your hand in one place. So with that in mind, let's just do a couple bars slowly. So with a really noisy left hand. Just cello. Good. Okay, that's you're getting there. I think you've got the hammer-ons, but the pull-offs you're reluctant to do. So just with the left hand alone, play it. Just do that much. I don't hear the F sharp. I run. There you go. Okay. But what you're doing is you're kind of holding your hand like that. Let the hand relax into kind of like a loose fist as you're playing. Good, now you know what you're doing. You're using this hinge. You're rotating the arm instead of doing everything with the fingers. Okay, make sure that you get it for free that way in a way. So, and also, one of my teachers, Starker, he used to talk about when you shift, you don't just shift to the note that you're playing. You're shifting to a region, you know. So basically, if if you have your hand ready to play any of those notes, you have more of the geographical location of the cello covered. So if I'm playing the most important note is the note that first finger is on, okay? That's sort of your satellite, your home base, your temporary home base. So then it's there. So every other note that happens, you gauge it based on the position of your first finger. You're not just, if you're shifting to say, you're really shifting to that note. Try that once. B natural to C natural. Okay, now one thing, don't lead with the hand. What am I doing? Which hinge did I talk about before? Yes, lead with your elbow, because your elbow is going to propel you there. And I always think of something Lynn Harrell used to say. He'd say, drive the ball with the golf club, and then at the last second, putt it in. So you do all the heavy lifting here, and then the fine tuning comes at the very end. So I'm really just shifting to the A and then dropping my third finger in place. Try with that in mind, and make sure you lead with your driver and not your putter, okay? May I touch your elbow? Okay, so you want to go up and then over. So you're anticipating the hand position and the arm position all the way back here. You're putting your hand in position so you don't have to do it later. That's the correct way to do it. So try that. That's it. Do it again. That's the idea. Another way to help to engage your intonation is to play with drones and make sure that you, like I would practice this. Every motion is analyzed and making sure that I'm covering that sort of hierarchy of what we need to do physically. I bet you haven't really thought a whole lot about this, but maybe you have, I don't know. But I think what we have to have is a like a physical hierarchy of how to do all of this. The number one thing is sound quality, right? And the number one attribute there is intonation. You can't have a beautiful sound without beautiful intonation. So that really comes first. And like I was asking, one of my best friends in the world is James Ennis, this amazing concert violinist. Everybody's heard of him here. And I said, James, how often do you think about intonation? Because it seems automatic with him. He says, it's the number one thing I obsess about all the time. Everything else is sort of built around that. So all of you in here, if you're serious, think about that. You know, it never goes away. You never reach a point where it's like, oh, okay, it'll take care of itself. It never does. It's like a lawn that needs to keep getting mowed, or a garden, you know, otherwise the weeds are going to take over. And so don't let the weeds take over. You're too good for that. So I would say pay very close attention to your hand shape. Hold up your left hand. Okay, so your first finger and your third finger, your first finger is longer than your third. It's weird. Mine, that's not weird, that's more typical. Mine is way shorter. So I have to pronate my hand like this and play more like a violinist would play. But you can afford to be a little more square because of the shape of your hand. So think about that as you approach all of this. Do you practice in front of a mirror ever? Like a full-length mirror or iPad or whatever? I'm so stuck in the 1800s. You guys could probably practice in front of your iPad as though you're probably making content for your Instagram pages anyway. Did I say that right? Is it Instagram or is it Insta or is it the gram now? Speak up. Someone tell me. You guys are so quiet. What's that? All of the above. Okay, my daughter, if she were in here, she'd be like this right now. She's 16. So I think, yeah, it's important that you remember what I was saying about assuming the position early, like anticipating where you're going to be and then creating that in the process of shifting. The earlier the better. And so I'll get off my soapbox with that. But left-hand articulation, the whole point of doing the snap, crackle, pop is so every note has that bell-like quality of having an being an open string. Okay, we can simulate a harpsichord or a piano. You know, pianos have hammers, harpsichords have the plectre, the hooks. So, and there's never any trouble hearing them because they have that percussive element. We must create that with the left hand, not just with the bow. The bow needs to pretty much be on the string all the time, but we can talk about that in a second. And I want to go a little over with her because it's the most extensive stuff, and I think everybody can gain something from this. So if you want to have a seat, we're gonna maybe go 10 more minutes or so. Give me your. So let's go back to the beginning again. Show me what you do at the very top. Both tutti. Everybody. Okay, good. I think, if we're to observe the metronome marking, it's what's 50, 58 or something? Okay, so it's close to. Yeah, it's not that slow. It's 56 to the quarter, right? Oh, okay. Yeah, so it really is not terribly slow. Can I do it with you once? So. You still want to have some, they're not just these megaliths or dolmens or whatever you want to call them, that it's like Stonehenge. I would say each sonority is born from the previous one. It's a consequence of what happens before. So also you need not roll the chord the same way each time. I'll just go do this myself. So you're basically 2 and 2, right? Then 2 and 2 and 2 again. What if you tried to avoid that, maybe, or like kind of roll and even at times you can get 3 notes. Maybe that one could be, or 2, and manage to do the 2 in the middle. Because you really, the ear is prepared to. That's the harmonic note, but that's the owie note. So ultimately have that A natural as your goal, but the D has to be really. You have to have some motion in there. Okay. Start a little faster, each chord coming out of the previous one. And start more assertively. I think you're a little like, I don't know, here we go. Be certain.
Okay.
Starker said something really great to me when I was your age. He said, Bobby, you try to get too much sound out of the cello. Put sound in the cello. That made me look at my belly button when I walked for like the next 50 years, or no, 40 years, overaging myself. Because he said, I took that to mean, I mean, it could mean so many things, but really here, I would say it means have exactly the sound that you want in mind. Not just, well, maybe this will work if I throw this at the wall, it'll stick. You've got to know why it sticks. So you have to have a strong, I know you have a strong feeling about how you want this to sound. So what did Captain Jean-Luc Picard, what did he say? Make it so? Is that what he said? Was that his phrase? I don't know, I'm probably mangling that too. But I have to tell my story when I met him. I called him, hi, Mr. Picard. I couldn't remember his real name. Great story. So, give me 2 adjectives for the beginning. Like, how do you feel about it? What does the music make you feel?
Like heart-wrenching.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great one. Yeah, that would be the first one that shows up on Family Feud. Ding. What else?
Kind of like emotional, I guess.
Well, everything's emotional,
Yeah.
but specifically, what kind of emotion?
Like searching.
Searching, sorrowful,
Yeah.
maybe, just, like pessimistic almost. All of those things. You can't be pessimistic about what you do to get that sound though. So have the hands meet and really convey that to the audience. It doesn't have to be, you're not going to, go for an Oscar here. You don't need to do that. But you have to sort of become that sonority. Like become the sonority as you prepare it. Just like a shift becomes the new, what we were saying before. And you're not off the hook with, here we get the articulation by starting the stroke from the string, kind of from inside the string even. Not just landing, because we don't have any control over the consonant, the right sound that we want. So your gesture can be like this, but then at the last second, place the bow on the string. Okay? I know I've been talking a lot and not letting you play enough, but let me see you do without piano. Good. Anastasia, can you think about, instead of moving with the bow, I notice your body is going the same direction. What if you push against with your right foot, and then reset for each one? Because paradoxically, that is going to open up the sound more. It seems like you would run out of bow that way because you're moving the cello against the bow, and I'm running out of oxygen here. It's not the case though. It augments it. Whereas if I move with it, it's not as effective. So you get more resistance when you go against it. One more time. Better. But you have to be careful too that really don't accept acceptable intonation. Okay? I don't really even know what that means because, I'm off the hook right now because I'm not warmed up. Because you're playing better in tune than I am. I think you have to demand more of yourself. And the more you thread that needle, the more fun it becomes, because your playing just gets so much more elevated, and you're clearly very talented, and it would be, if you want to take this very seriously, I think you have to go to that level, and really, when you said searching, it's all within you. All of these things you can do, and you can do them pretty much today, but you have to make your brain hurt. You have to concentrate so much. So another, when you reach the, I wouldn't slow down too much too soon. Like that towards the end. Oh, I don't like these strings at all. Blame the strings, right? What do they say? A mediocre workman blames his tools. So yeah, these strings have to go. That was a big mistake. Can you play from right there? Okay, now remember to move, try to move against the bow and create another feel. I want you to be aware of exactly what you're doing at all times, not just with your fingers and your arms and your hands. Your whole body's involved. You have to, why am I doing that? Question yourself. If you're serious, you got to do all this. Right there? Okay, remember what I talked about with positions? Whatever fingering you're doing, we all have to do this. You have to crawl through things to learn them quickly. There's no substitute for that. Because if you learn it that way, you will forget it very slowly. It's our Perlman used to say this in his vlogs. He'd say, if you learn a piece quickly, you forget it quickly. If you learn it slowly, meaning you crawl through every motion and ask, it's like picking up a piece of, like a knick-knack or something, and dusting it off and making sure it's like facing the right direction, all that stuff. When you're doing a deep clean, it's like you're doing a deep clean and making lots of decisions on the fly. Surprisingly, you will learn the piece much faster this way, because you end up chasing your tail the other way. And if you got something that sounded good, that sounded right, it might have been by accident. And it's like, well, how do I duplicate that? You have no idea how to duplicate it. You want to be able to duplicate or replicate something very similar to that every time. And once you've gotten it right once, you can do it right every time. But it takes a lot of that concentration, and you have to hone that muscle, this muscle up here. All this other stuff will follow. So do yourself a favor and slow down in your practicing, and make sure that when you shift, you're not just shifting to the note that you're playing, you're shifting to the region, the position, okay? I hope all this makes sense. Yeah, we should probably move on, but bravo. Good luck to you. And then Tchaikovsky went and toured like the rest of Europe or something. And in the meantime, Fitzenhagen said, I don't like the order of these variations, and I think I'm going to do this and cut this. And so he went back to the publisher, and then the publisher, Jurgensen, they went ahead and published it like that. I think that's how it went. Well, Tchaikovsky was pretty upset with Fitzenhagen. And there's a whole other version of this that's the original version, which is still Tchaikovsky, and it's still great, and it actually resembles more like the pacing of a slightly different order. Like a lot of that coda material is in the middle of the piece, and then it sort of gets split up, and then it comes back at the end. I would argue that Fitzenhagen actually improved the piece. I would be like that guy who is like, dares to say that maybe Tchaikovsky was wrong about his own music. And either way, it's great. And there's a reason why it's so, requested and played by symphony orchestras and solos all the time. But I understand you're an engineering student who just happens to be a cello virtuoso. How do you just do that in your spare time?
I guess.
It's maybe when the heat is off, it's like easier to improve. There's something to that though. It's like if you've got another pursuit, and this is clearly like your number one hobby, right? Or do you like rebuild cars and stuff too on the side?
No, just rockets.
Just rockets, okay. Right on. I'm not surprised that you have probably a myriad of things that you've mastered, but it's really just first class cello, very, very good. And Laszlo is a great teacher. I can tell.
Yeah.
I can see some of his influence. A few of the things that I would mention to you, they might boil down to musical taste, and they might boil down to like sort of string playing taste. I wonder, did you ever play for a cellist named Brinton Smith? He's a very close friend of mine.
No, I've heard of him before though.
He's principal cellist in the Houston Symphony. We grew up together practically. And he is, you sound a lot like him, and you remind me of him at your age. You're what, 20?
20.
You're just 20. That's amazing. Wow. So you have a really kind of Central to Eastern European mid-20th, like early part of the 20th century type of playing, and I admire that a lot. What kind of cello was that, by the way? You-
Italian.
Well,
Right.
it's got probably a label in it.
Well,
but-
yeah, Mile Blot. Mile Blot. It was made last year.
Mile Blot?
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it? How do you spell the first name?
Mael.
Oh, Mael, B-L-O-T?
Yeah.
I think that's Eric Blot's son.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mael, yeah. Eric is, they're French, right?
Italian.
Well,
I think.
Blot is the name. They're originally French, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a great sounding instrument, and who knows? Maybe you'll decide to be a professional musician, and that's when the cello will get hard all of a sudden, right? It's like when you want to do something and you're taking the heat off of it. It's a different story.
It's always hard.
Well, but it all depends on how you look at it. I think you're I get the impression that you have a very healthy outlook on music and the cello. And besides, you've got that cool Dracula-looking cape thing. It's like, you should wear one too. So, right from I just want to pick up a couple of spots really fast. In the D minor variation, when you reach do you know what harmony is happening right there? What the function is tonally? It's a big moment whenever a composer uses that sonority. It's called a Neapolitan. Okay, flat 2-6. Okay, so it's E flat major in D minor, but first inversion. So the bottom note is so it functions as a predominant. So you get your 6-4 and then the 5-3 after that. So, but one of the most dramatic things to do. It's like a scream from a window on a dark night, and Tchaikovsky loves doing this. Is to employ that. Can you and I? This is going to sound really bad, but you'll find me. So the pacing of that, you really have to get behind a kind of like an emotional landscape, like a narrative. And right now, it's musical and it's tasteful, but it doesn't really pull my heart out. And this is, you must do something here, okay? Now, and it doesn't always also need to be all right angles, and like I was talking with Anastasia, it doesn't have to always line up perfectly. The last variation does. But this one, you can get away with a little bit more around the beat. Do you follow?
Yeah.
You want to do a little bit of that? Can you do the last time you have... And you can also... There's so many ways to do it. Never play at the same point twice. Never. Okay? All right? So... Yeah, I was going to say you're an architect, but you're an engineer. I'm trying to think of great engineers. I'm coming up empty. The last iteration of that. It's right there. Just go for it right from there. How about so broaden this a little bit. Then let the air out of the tires. And even notice how I anticipated that second half of the beat, but I made up the rest of the time. in that beat. So I'll do the. You found me? And whatever the dynamic is there, what was it? Does it say?
It's piano, but there's a crescendo.
Yeah, play fortissimo. You know, it's a cello, it's not a trombone. We have to remember that. Honor the dynamics, but don't be too much of a fundamentalist zealot when it comes to them, okay? Look at it in context, and Tchaikovsky didn't play the cello. And often he'll put like 6 Fs. It's like, I guess he wants it loud. But that's like the end of Souvenir de Florence and some of the pieces. So, right there. Don't forget, the most important note to vibrate is the one right before the shift. Don't have your mind already in the shift because you're going to forget to sing. That's very crucial. So we can go. I know we're sort of pressed for time, but in the final variation. You know, all that stuff. If you want to get it really to the next level, I think. Remember what I was talking about, keeping tabs over the home finger, which is the thumb, of course. Here, you were doing that fingering, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and everything around that finger. You could even practice your own scales around that, and that will help to solidify the position. And then you'll only, the finger that needs to go down is sort of rocked into position with your elbow. And it's not all done like this. We really, especially the larger the string instrument, the more you have to rely on this hinge, as though you're opening a doorknob. I guess they do open that way, right? Yeah. So, I guess depending on if you're south of the equator. I'm kidding. No. So there's that. Just a couple other points. The theme and the first variation, I think they need to match up a little bit more in terms of tempo and affect. The effect that I got was that you're playing already, bam, out of the gate. It was too virtuosic. It needs to be a little bit more charming, I picture like this Parisian dandy with his hat and his fancy pantaloons walking across a bridge in Paris, and then his hat blows off his head and he's trying to chase after it a little bit. There's something foppish about it, you know. It's not just, you know, fast and steady wins the race, or fast and crazy wins the race. Believe me, it'll be more impressive if you're painting a character and playing with the same level of virtuosity. And Starker said this to me: control generates excitement, as he inhaled an entire cigarette down to the filter in like one breath. So that the first theme, sorry. So it shouldn't be too fast or too slow, just right. And then so that here you've got a little bit more leeway in terms of you can do that rather than. There's nothing more annoying and boring than hearing that played as an etude. And you didn't. I'm just saying it could be much more creative if you gave yourself a little bit more breathing room and had it correspond with the tempo of the theme. Can you start the piece one more time? Forget the horn solo. Just let's have the. Okay, that are not vibrated? Is that on purpose?
No.
Okay, so again, it'll sound a lot more expensive if you. Always, that's the note that connects. Unless you do. Open string could be lovely there, but then that can't be too vibrant. So. Now, when you have that under a slur, it has to be as insanely legato as possible. Not. You might as well play separate bows if you're going to play with that much portato. Now, anybody who knows me and has seen me teach knows that I sound like a broken record when it comes to legato playing and using the full ribbon of hair. I just did a tone-based video on this. And it's very difficult to not play legato. It's very difficult to play portato when you're using the full ribbon of hair. Try it once. Hold the bow almost like you would, like a violinist would hold their bow. Like with this having a little more contact on top of the stick and having the weight of your, still holding like a cello bow, but a little bit more, yeah, like that. Make sure that bow hair, may I? Is absolutely flat. And it'll look like you're almost on the other side of it. Yeah. Now play da 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 ya da dum. Okay, you just went back to the side of the hair. I want you to let this be number one, the bow hair. Nope, you're playing with the side of the hair. Yeah, it's gonna look like you're going almost all. That's it. You guys hear that? The G sharp, F sharp, ya-da-dum, that was absolutely connected, and you didn't even have to try. And that's a consequence of keeping the rubber on the road. As a motorcycle enthusiast, you keep them rubber on the road. That's how you do it. And you don't need to try. Now, it's when we play with the side of the hair that we all get in trouble. All of us, because then those bad habits creep in. It's like, oh, isn't that a beautiful sound? It feels right I mean, we want to feel symmetry. We change a note in the left hand, and we also do it in the right. But a way to avoid that is to cut it off at the pass by using the full ribbon of hair. Okay.
So would you say you use that more often than?
That is my default setting. Look at where my bow tracks. 90 degrees perfectly with the bow, without even trying. And it's because I'm letting the hair guide me. This is how you become the master of the bow. Now, you're free to play however you want, but if you want things to track in the same place as a default setting, of course we're not going to play like that all the time, but it's up to us to alter it. Not, oh, why am I not getting the sound that I want? That's the almost, I would say it's up there with intonation. But if you're playing with the side of the hair, the bow, and I'll show you. Look at what is happening just without. The bow sort of tracks where it wants to go, and it's not consistent. We want to control as many variables as we can. And as an engineer, you know this, right? I mean, you have to ask yourself, what is the actual problem that's happening? And when we have these little micro changes in the angle of the hair to the string, that can cause intonation issues. And we often blame our left hand when indeed it's the right. I know that sounds really weird, but it sometimes it's the bow that creates that problem. How are we on time? Were we?
You want 2 minutes?
Yeah, sure. We can go, yeah, because I want to leave some time at the end for some questions and stuff. And you didn't play the. You want to? No. Well, actually, you slur it in like that. I can see why, but I think it actually sounds better if you separate them. And then the key is not to just start from the string, which nobody does. They always start from the sky. Start from inside the string. I always say think to myself, I'm starting from underneath the string, that I'm digging so much. Now, I know that I drop a lot of names in here, but it's important that I give credit where credit is due. I dropped the name because I want you to know that it's not an original thought from me. Joseph Silverstein, who was one of my mentors, law for a long time, he said, he made a really big impression on me in so many ways, but in this way in particular, he would say that what made an impression on him, which in turn made the impression on me. You've heard of a group called the Budapest Quartet, an old group that the Schneider brothers and a whole bunch of other people had played in. There were Russians that called the group the Budapest Quartet. Boris Kreut was the first violinist of the group, and Silverstein used to say that when the concert started, his bow was on the string and it never left. It literally never left the string. He kept it there. Maybe he didn't trust himself, I don't know, and Silverstein played like that too. He played everything from the string. And he didn't take the chance of starting from the sky. It's the number one cause of bad ensemble in an orchestra, among string players, is that we all are starting from the sky, so the attack can't be the same. When we start from the string, it's much different. Now, our ensemble with ourselves is another matter, because you're getting rid of a variable that you do not need. Now, you can be as dramatic as you want, but at the very last second, place the bow. Always place the bow on the string. And with how much hair? All of it. All of your hair. Okay? Make sure that you okay, I'm not selling you a bill of goods here. Just make sure that you give it a shot and see what it does for your playing. You'll realize how many things you get for nothing by just observing what happens when you use that all the time. And I think you sound wonderful, and these things are only going to elevate your playing more. So, bravo to you. That's great. Very brave, very fearless playing. While we get ready for Khalil, does anybody have any questions? Brewing? Nobody? Yeah.
Talking about hammering.
Yep.
Is that applied to all types of playing or certain or all types of pieces?
All of them.
Because I've heard like on Bach you can do more smooth with your stuff.
There are degrees of it. Obviously, there's too much. You can always have too much, but you want enough so it sounds like you don't sound like you're an 8th grader to when you talk. You enunciate your words. Okay, tighten things up a little bit. And you'd be surprised at how much you get with left-hand articulation. Just like you'll be surprised at how much better your intonation gets when you use flat bow hair, because then you're controlling the exact sort of, when I say the ribbon of hair, the ribbon of sound that is spun out of that. And obviously, we don't want to have the same sound all the time. I'm talking about a default setting from which we depart. And it's the same with the left-hand stuff. So there are degrees of it, and you're not always going to be, playing Malagueña. You're not always going to be doing that. Obviously, that's too much. So, but in practice, that's actually a good exercise, as long as your roommates are out of the situation. Okay, Khalil. Any other questions, by the way? Maybe hold them until Khalil's done. What are you gonna play?
Bach 2 Prelude.
Which prelude?
2 Prelude.
Number 2. Okay,
The
great.
music.
How about it?
practice.
Yeah, but more practice how?
Well, I try to really understand my pieces now, because back then I tend to just really play romantic. And
Well, you still do.
yeah, but it's getting
but it's contained in it's framed
yeah.
in a very tasteful way, and I'm not that's not a criticism.
Thank you.
I think it's as long as you tick the right boxes, you can't bend a phrase so far that it breaks.
Yeah.
You can't bend a rhythm just to suit your will without it fitting other certain metrics at the same time. I tried to remember what it was that you played for me last year. It was
the
Bach,
first
wasn't it?
prelude, yeah.
It was the first prelude,
Yeah.
and it was kind of all over the map, and
Yeah.
and you're a real cellist now. I mean, I hope that doesn't offend you in any way, the way I'm saying it. I mean it as a huge compliment. And who's your teacher?
Hyunji Yi. She told me she played for you maybe 20 years ago.
20 years old.
It's Noah Chi's.
I'm old
teacher.
years old, so ancient. Really, just terrific playing, and I'm wondering if you could go a step further, just in terms of practice. I don't know how much of this you sit down with a metronome and play it sort of exactly. I would say before you bend a rhythm, you have to master it absolutely straight, with no inflection, and try to make as much music out of it. Like if you have a beautiful piece of furniture that is unvarnished, sometimes that naked wood that's finished beautifully by itself can really. Have you ever seen a violin or a cello that's not varnished yet? Like it's got all of that, the personality and everything, but there's no vibrato, there's no sheen on it. But you can tell that this is a very beautiful object. And I think, I sense anyway, that part of the process for you may be a little bit lacking.
Yeah.
Like you might not, and nobody's, how old are you?
13.
Nobody's gonna blame you for having some impatience. You know, I'm 54 and guaranteed I'm as impatient as you are. But I have to make myself go back to square one. Because you go to square one pretty much every time you get the instrument out of the case. Okay. And it, like I was saying before, it's like trimming a lawn.
Yeah.
You mow it once, it's not forever. You have to keep at it. And you know, the metronome is a very useful device. Often we get a little bit too attached. The umbilical cord is a bit too strong with the metronome and with the electric tuners. We have a tuner built right in to our instrument. We don't need an external tuner. If you must practice with one, fine. But really, number one is you've got to play in tune with the cello. You know, and I'm not saying, oh, play in tune with your cello. No, that can mean like, of course I'm going to play in tune with my cello. I'm not going to play out of it, but play in tune with the way your cello is tuned. So, which mine isn't, but let's pretend it is. That rings much better than. I'm talking pie in the sky ideals, which, if you have standards as high as some of us do, you'll never reach them. And you'll always be a little bit depressed. But that keeps you improving. There has to be some suffering that goes on. It can't just all be, hey, this is fun. It'll always be fun. But in order to reach, you know, a heretofore unseen level in your own playing, which you have. I mean, can you tell in your own playing that it's like, are you still at the point where it's like you get out of bed in the morning and you grab the cello, it's like, whoa, I'm better than I was last week? Do you ever have those moments? I remember them. Well, I was your age and I have those moments like, oh my God, I can actually play this passage that I couldn't play yesterday.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? And what's the hardest piece you've played so far?
Technically or emotionally?
Yeah. Emotionally. They're all hard emotionally. It's like, because every time you screw up, you're like, oh, I'm worthless. No.
Well, probably like Popper Gavotte, but.
Really? Okay, I think you're ready to do something really challenging. Like, let's say like Popper Tarantella. That would be the next step. I think the Gavotte that's the, or do it with up and down staccato, that would be. Or what I used to do as a kid is when I get bored with I take them all up an octave. Does everyone
I played that last year.
Danse Rustique?
Yeah.
Danse Rustique. That was my big solo in, I think, 4th grade. And I got so sick of that piece, but my teacher was such a stickler for detail. And a lot of the things that I'm saying are directly from her. And she made sure that they were branded into my brain. You know, like, you know how like a record, you guys know records for like LPs, and you can use them not just as a musical instrument, like a DJ, but you can actually play music on them. They have grooves. The grooves on my mental LP are so deep in that regard. You know, it's like my old 78s with the needle. I have a Victrola at home, and my wife hates it. Anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you that. I think my point is you've gotten this far in just a year. I think it's time for you to like really up your technique game and not be afraid. I would recommend to all string players, basically, everybody in the room, we're taught from an early age to start scales from the bottom all the way up to the top and back. And what does that teach us? Oh God, it's terrifying up there. That's like the last place we go. That's like the hinterlands. What if we start scales from the top, go down to the bottom, and then go back up? What if you were to like put those exercises on their head And each and every one of you have something that you do that to. Turn it upside down. A scale, an arpeggio, start from the top, go to the bottom, and then back up. It will lessen your fear of the upper register. It will, I promise you. You won't. Because it's actually, who was it, the teacher who said that it's actually easier to play in the upper register. You don't have to move around as much. I mean, our hands have, violinists and violists much more than cellists, but you know what it's like to like act like an amphibian, you know, to have webbed feet or webbed fingers up there. Because look at Itzhak Perlman's hands; they're enormous. How he plays in tune up there, I don't know how he does it. He must have like sub fingers within the fingers. But we have to do it too. You have to think like a frog, and so all these things I'm sure will come pretty naturally to you. Now, show me how you're holding your bow with the. Okay, let me see your thumbnail.
It's kind of long.
Yeah, you gotta trim that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're not gonna be able to have the correct contact. Sometimes, we're all taught to hold the bow in this sort of crook right here, right? This little area between the frog and the stick. That's where all the wear usually is when you're looking at bows, old bows. Well, in my sort of advancing years, I've sort of amended that. Like I will often start with holding my bow. I wouldn't recommend this right now, but as you improve and get more comfortable, I often start by holding my bow like that, but inside the frog, and actually doing the same thing here, because then it's like, I was at the Dodger game the other day, and sorry we stole Otani from you guys, but I was watching the catcher. He hit 3 home runs in that game. One of which I was mad. I was using the restroom at the time, and I told my daughter, I said, every time I have to go to the restroom, something huge in the game happens. And lo and behold, it did. He had a 3rd home run. He did a Reggie Jackson hat trick. It's crazy. You guys baseball fans in here? We got 1, 2, 3. Anyway, those of you who didn't raise your hand, the best in life is passing you by. But there are certain correlates. I was a big baseball player all through high school. I really wanted to be a baseball player and play cello on the side. But I wasn't a good enough athlete. But I was a catcher, so I got hit in the head a lot. You can probably gather that. But also, I paid close attention to how people bat. Some people really choke up on the bat, and some people hold the bat a little farther down, and that's for power. And that there's something about that. When you have a little bit extra down here at the heel of the hand, you can control more. What I'm noticing though is that your thumb, I wanted to walk around but I didn't want to be rude. Your thumb often does this, right? Like it'll slip into that shape. That's the kiss of death. Because I also noticed that this happens. Like, I'm exaggerating, but did anybody else notice that his bow stroke wasn't completely straight? A couple things you can do. Cut that nail.
Yeah.
You're going to find out how much you can get for free by doing that. And then, remember, I don't know if you were here when I was harping on, Caden, right? On him using the full hair. You can do that. And see, watch what happens to my thumb and the rest of my hand as I go out to the. What am I doing?
It's kind of extending.
It's kind of what?
Extending a little bit your thumb.
Well, but is it maintaining its shape pretty much? It's this curved shape. But what I'm doing is I'm compensating in order to keep that hair flat. Look at what I'm doing with my fingers. I'm moving my fingers.
Yeah, you're pulling kind of.
Yeah, so I can, and I'm also moving against the bow. And I'm not just, not everything is being done with the arm itself. The cello is doing half the work for me. So get used to the idea, and you will have, maybe some of the things I said last year might have hit you, because I think I remember saying, maybe I didn't. Maybe you just came to this conclusion on your own, because it's happening naturally with you. You do move quite a bit in the opposite direction of the bow, which is desirable. And, you know, I think they refer, Galamian used to call this as figure eight. It's basically based on that. And it's amazing how few people think about how their bodies move as they play. More often than not, they're doing these arbitrary motions that are either in the same direction of the bow or just sort of looking heavenward for inspiration. You know, if you're not ready, if your piece isn't ready, do that. You know, you can entertain the audience that way, and they might not listen to everything that's coming out of the instrument. I prefer to have people listen with their ears and not their eyes. I'm talking about the audience. Because the audience is like, look, he looks so musical. That makes no sense at all to me. Now, you do want to sell a piece a little bit. You have to be in the right, you know. The one criticism I have about Starker is that often he continued to teach while he was performing. It was like, this is how you do everything. It's like, all right, but do you ever let go? You know, it's the one beef I have with him. You know, he'd demolish me in person for saying that with logic. But I'm just saying, he was the ultimate in getting people to listen with their ears. And that is something I'd like for you to think about. Also, when you, I did notice some nice things happening, and I'm not sure if you're even aware of what you're doing. There's a little bit of swinging going on here. Was that on purpose?
Yeah.
Don't overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
Think it.
Yeah.
But think it in the context that I'm playing it straight. I just got pulled over by the cops, and they want me to do that heel to toe thing. That's never happened to me. Anyway, I watch too many of these like cop YouTube things where, you know, doom scrolling, is that what they call it? Is that what you youths call it? Or do they say de-essing or something? Anyway, okay, so you have to, in the context of walking a tightrope, you know, you have to have that as your template. And around that, just think the other stuff, because enough is going to come out. When I tell people to vibrate a note using their regular vibrato, and then I'll say, use half that. They'll still use the same amount. And it's like, now play it with no vibrato. They'll play it with a tiny bit of vibrato. And it's like, you didn't know it, but you just played with vibrato, and you were thinking it, and you did it. But you're not going with the absolutes. So you have to know that just thinking something is going to make enough of it come out. So I would recommend practicing this. You know, it might feel like a drag because you're a smart kid, you're quick. Clearly, you got this far in a year. I would recommend doing this even if it is a drag. Just spend a few minutes a day going back to basics and concentrating on all this stuff, because the result is going to be a lot more, you know, assured muscle memory, a lot more confidence, and you'll be much freer as a result of that. I am having to fill in the blanks that I didn't do when I was younger. I mean, I was a really natural, and I had a great teacher, and I was playing some of the most difficult things by the time I was your age, but I didn't think about it. I didn't stop to think about, why am I able to do that? And it only came later when I crashed and burned in life and realized that I need to know how I'm doing this, because I can't duplicate it any other way than to intellectualize it as well. So walk the straight and narrow, and then think the other stuff. Am I making any sense? Am I making sense, or am I speaking gibberish up here? Does it? Because there's something Casals used to say: freedom within order, and this is your order. You know, you've got. They seem kind of pedantic, and then you add the characteristics of what makes this the piece it is. So you've got an arpeggio at the beginning. So you've got this long A, So you've got something that's suspended in air, something that has to come down. So you have to simulate that. And this is the great. It's pure jazz. It's like Keith Jarrett sitting down at the piano and just doing an improvisation. Only his name happens to be J.S. Bach. And you could picture it sitting down at the keyboard and improvising this, writing notes to himself, and I mean, when those chords at the end, some people improvise around those and play. I don't know, Starker did that. I know Isserlis, I think, does something. I just like the chords. I mean, you can't know for sure, but we also have the handcuffs on when we play Bach. It's like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody. Believe me, you're going to offend everyone. You know, there are 10 million wrong ways to play Bach. Yours and mine are just two of those. Okay? So just remember that. You can't get too hung up on, oh, am I going to, am I doing right or wrong? And of course I'm projecting my own personality right now because I've lived through this. But I've seen it happen to a lot of my friends who then, say, well, it has to be played a certain way. No, it doesn't. Why? Why? Do you have a minute to play through again?
The whole thing?
Yeah. Or I'll stop you. How about we why don't you get rid of some of the mannerisms? Or, like I said, think them, but try to play it straight. Okay, the long note is too long.
Yeah.
So think. Do you subdivide when you play? Do you think?
If I'm struggling on the rhythm,
If you're struggling,
yeah.
how about all the time? I subdivide to the nth degree when I'm playing. Like in this, I would think 64th notes. As though I'm playing a tremolo, but an even measured tremolo. I'll even practice it that way once. That's how OCD I get with stuff like this. So think obsessively about subdividing and the sense of constant rhythmic renegotiation. That will keep you from rushing or dragging. Okay, one more time. Vibrato at all?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's fine. It's just, I'm not saying you have to do zero vibrato. And you can let the vibrato develop. For the function of the note to then give birth to the next note. Everything is a consequence of what preceded it, right? So that next note is, in a way, standing on the shoulders of the note that its parent.
Yeah.
So, depending on what's going on harmonically, vibrato can really do a lot for it musically, and not just as a color, as an arbitrary thing that we all do, but it develops. And often string teachers say, especially cello teachers, vibrate wider and faster when it's more intense. I disagree so much with that. If you're going to vibrate faster and more intensely, it's got to go inside the note, not outside. You vibrate more narrow. So if you start out, it may sound wider, because I'm getting more amplitude with the wave that I'm making. But it's like going inside that chord. Let's take another note. How about this one? In order to play it in tune with the lower string, it's here, but to play it in tune with the upper string. See what I'm doing? So there you've got your floor and then your ceiling with that note. I'm basically outlining my vibrato. And that's an exercise that we can all benefit from doing, is comparing any note. Pick any note and compare it to the string below it and then the string above it. If you're playing the note on the A string, pretend you've got a phantom E string and then raise the note as though it's the same position on the lower string. So, and then when you get to the C string, if you're playing, you don't just want to match it to the open G, you want to match it to like an open F string, which then would be lower. So when people say, is vibrato above or below the note? Your answer is yes, because it depends on the control. It depends on if you're controlling it with the upper or a lower control. But it's always tethered to something because we play a string instrument that is tuned with 4 strings in a Pythagorean way. We have to make sure that we activate as much of the natural resonance of the instrument as possible. Now, I know I'm getting way out in the sticks right now, but in order to really hone your intonation, it's essential to practice with drones and to know not just the fingerings of the scales, but so your fingers aren't going to be like lightning.
Yeah.
You know, you want them to strike in the same place twice and 2,000 times. So you get used to, and that there's no such thing as one little pinpointed place. There's a range. There's a small little playground. I call that the sandbox, where we can play around with that. But it's not very big. So thread that needle. Anyway, I think you're doing great, and good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, bravo. So I guess we've got a few minutes to maybe, Iman, if you want to maybe prompt them if they have any. Don't be shy. This is the time to ask.
You know, Mr. deMain gives so many, I don't think of it name dropping at all, but so many, it's kind of trip down historical musical lane. So were there any names that you mentioned that maybe you'd like to know more about? Silverstein or Starker or any of the others, James Ennis. I know you know Coleman, but I'm not sure they know.
I think I mentioned only a few living people. Most of the people I mentioned are no longer with us. But it's important that we know whose shoulders we're standing on. You know, a lot of people don't even know who Casals is. You know, when I mentioned Pablo Casals, anybody heard of him? Okay, the cellists have, for sure. But a lot of cellists haven't. They only know Trolls and Ali. That's all, and Yo-Yo. Of course, everyone knows Yo-Yo. But without Leonard Rose, there'd be no Yo-Yo. Without, without Dupre, there'd be no Ali Weilerstein. So, I mean, these hugely influential musicians. You need to know.
Best class I ever took, I was telling someone this the other day, when I was at NEC, was Lawrence Lesser's oral heritage class, where we listened to only dead people from violin down to double bass, and everybody's playing changed after that.
Well,
Great class.
the values that these musicians had are, I guess your generation would say, based. And they are based. Means just like the truth, it's like it's honest, it's right. OG. These guys were OG. Especially like a lot of the Central and Eastern European immigrants that were, fleeing Nazism. And and settling in places like LA and New York and Chicago, and they brought all of that tradition with them. And I don't want to see it die. You know, I was so fortunate to get to work with Silverstein and Gingold, and with Starker, and with Felix Gallimere, and all those guys at Marlborough, old school, that, you know, people like to complain about the young, you know, oh, they don't have the same values. Well, it's kind of on us in a way that we don't instill that enough, you know, like we're raising bad children. I'm not talking about you guys, but just, you can't just watch a YouTube video and say, I think I play like that. You know, there's so much more underneath. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but anyway, let's have some questions. Somebody, yes.
I had like 2 questions about bowing. So for moving your thumb into that area, I've tried that before, and like how do you
Into which area? This
into
here?
the rock area?
Yeah.
How do you get into that? Because it felt very awkward for me.
It's like, I always wonder, well, why is it there in the first place? Why does it happen? Why isn't it just a solid thing if we just end up using the... I think it's there to have that option. So I don't just think of it as like a single, like a fulcrum. Like one point, just like intonation, is sort of a little bit of a moving target, depending on what your control is, upper, lower, etc. You don't want to venture outside that. So here, I sort of treat it the same way. If I want to start here, I make sure the rest of my hand corresponds. Like I have to drape the rest of my fingers much closer to the butt end of the frog. They do call this the butt of the stick. I know, haha. And then for other certain music, I'll choke up. Like in the left hand, it's the same. The thumb has to go with the middle of the hand. Like some people make the mistake of like when they extend, they don't move the thumb. And what happens is that this muscle tightens up. Just like it tightens up in the right hand when you don't maintain what I call the C shape. It'll go into what I call a G shape, which, feel it, everybody do this with either right or left hand. Feel this muscle now. Tightens up, right? If you hyperextend your thumb that way. Now, if you relax that, if you make a loose fist, that's supple. That's what we want at all times, is that suppleness of that muscle. Because once that tightens up, you're done. And Khalil, be really careful with that, because I do notice that you tend to grip the bow instead of cradling it. And they call it a bow grip, but it's really more of it's a more gentle term than that. But so I like to have a range of the bow grip like that. Just like I like to be able to rotate the bow, and I rotate it far enough so it looks like it's almost tipping over towards the bridge itself. So I tell myself, think like a violinist. You'll play better. Okay? Too many cellists think like bass players. Sorry, bass players. I'm writing a double bass method book. It's called First Remove the Wheel. Just kidding. That's where it's supposed to last. Anyway, you guys are a tough audience. My goodness. All right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but let's get some other. It must be something you want to know that only I can tell you. Maybe not. Go ahead. Okay. All right. You look like you.
What concert do you recommend for the Hollywood Bowl this summer?
I don't even know what we're doing. Actually, Augustine Hanelich is playing with us tomorrow night.
Tomorrow.
We're doing Scheherazade as well. So better change my strings back so the cello solos sound good. Yeah, 'cause I'm sorry, people. I don't usually sound this way. This is a $5 million cello. You'd never know it based on the strings that are on it. It's on loan to me, and I'm very lucky. It's too bad that you can't really hear what it sounds like. Yeah, that's a good concert. The John Williams well, it's hard to get tickets to. I'm playing a big solo on that. 7 years in Tibet, that piece. I better learn that. What else is going on? You know, I'm one of these people that doesn't really know what I'm doing until I get there. So, I mean, if I have a solo, then you better believe I get there 10 minutes early. So I'm not really big on practicing. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have to paint myself into a corner so small that I end up having to do it. Bernstein had a great phrase for that. He said, to create something of value, you need a plan and not quite enough time. It's brilliant. It's, you never feel ready, ever. If you do feel ready, you're doing it wrong. Because there's an infinite level of, like I said, threading that needle that you can do. There's like, if you think you've gotten it, there's another needle inside that needle. And there's another level, and it's endless. It's endless. So, anyway, with that said, yes, sir.
I remember you were talking about like for shifting, getting your hand into position before you actually like in a physical position for the shift, right?
That's the idea, yeah.
Which how would you say you apply that for like faster shifts? Because it's like really fast. Like, would you be able to do that in time, or would you come to?
There's a video of Heifetz. You can see they slow it way down, and you can see how he does the same preparation. The answer is to crawl through everything, and just because a passage is fast doesn't mean you shouldn't deconstruct it. Every great string player, from my friend Stefan Jakiv to James Ennis to Johannes Moser to anybody, they deconstruct these things to the smallest element and follow the breadcrumbs from each move to each move, and then duplicate it, and then triplicate it, everything, and making sure that they know how they did it. So, no, that's a great question. You're always going to be doing it if you're doing it right. Okay, so you just make sure you have a different attitude and perspective towards it. It's like, oh, it's fast, I don't need to be practicing this slow. Precisely the opposite. You have to practice it slowly.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah.
How did you become friends with James Ennis?
We met at Meadowmount. He's 6 years younger than me, so I was 18 and he was 12, and we just became friends. And I heard him play during a thunderstorm. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Meadowmount School of Music. It's a famous old, very, very old practice camp, basically.
The one I sent you guys that video, the cello scales.
It's a lot less rustic, the accommodations, than they used to be, and they have air conditioning now. And my dorm didn't have air conditioning, and I had to bring my own towel and my own blanket, and my own pillow. I mean, it was really like sleeping in a barn. And the concert hall had screens and not windows. They've redone all that, and it's now they have. I think it's just blocked off. It's solid, but there was a huge thunderstorm, and James Ennis played the Isaiah Ballade just like he plays it today. It was the most. It made such a huge impression on me. And we've been friends ever since that summer. We were at Marlborough together. We were at Juilliard, and we've played. We've been in a string quartet together. We played together for 6 years in the quartet, and then I stopped playing in the quartet because I was too busy. I play with him every summer at the Seattle Chamber Music Festival, and I'm not going this summer, but we've made a bunch of recordings together, and we're in touch on it. We're just good friends. So, and I've learned. I can't tell you how much I've learned from him about not just string playing and music making, but just about life, how he views life in a very different way than I do, and I try to emulate him. He's in spite of him being 6 years younger than me, he's every bit as much a big brother that I've ever wanted. I really look up to him a lot. Yeah, so one of the most valuable people I know.
if not the most. My wife's not here. One of the most. Yeah. So that's how we know each other. You know, it's inevitable that we're, you know, I'm gonna have friends that are way more famous than me. So, anyway, anyone else? Yeah.
So like I'm trying to choose a school and like I'll be auditioning next month and stuff for colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering like how do you know that you connect with a cello teacher and that it would be a good fit for you?
Well, gosh. You know, what do you young people say? When you know, you know. Often it's a shot in the dark, and often it's like you end up going where you get in. If there's a cello teacher that's particularly interested in you, I think that's a very good sign. If you're looking for recommendations, I have the one at the top of my list would be Steve Doan at the Eastman School of Music, which is a great school. I had 5 wonderful years there. And I went to Curtis, I went to Juilliard, I went to Yale, I went to school in Germany. Eastman was my greatest experience as a student. Now it may be a little different than it was back in the Stone Age when I was I was in the first class that lived in the new dorms. So, but I got to live in the old dorms too. It's frightening. Yeah, condemned building that we were living in. But that's all part of the experience. Hopefully you won't have to live in a condemned building. But there are so many capable teachers, and I know this is exactly what you asked me, but I would not just stop at the designer name schools like Eastman, Juilliard, Curtis, the USC's, Colburn. There are so many state schools that have young, wonderful teachers who wanted to go that route and share their stuff, because the level of string playing has gotten higher just across the board. And what is the world going to do with so many great graduates of IU and Curtis and Juilliard? They end up teaching at places like Ball State University and University of Toledo, and there are so many smaller schools that are less expensive. You probably get great financial aid, and the facilities are so much better than the big name schools. I am not kidding. Ball State, there's like brand new Steinway in like every practice room. It's crazy. I mean, that's at Eastman we had these beater pianos that generations of people doing their piano audits practiced on. And I think somebody actually pushed one out the window. It wasn't me. I'm not somebody. Anyway, that isn't. I can't really answer that question like you want me to. You just have to take a chance, and I think it really. Of course, you're going to have to ask around, and ask someone like me, like what I think of this teacher or that. Mr. Concerto could share my contact info with you if you want, and I can help if you wanted to run it by me. I don't teach at any school right now, so I don't have the bandwidth for that. It's too much of a huge responsibility. I can't be a slave to 2 masters. I'm a performer right now, so maybe later I'll feel like I can do more than the occasional master class. So I hope that helps somewhat. Anyone else? Yeah.
Last question. Any general advice for people majoring in music?
Don't. Well, your generation is so entrepreneurial and so creative, and but here's the thing that I warn. I kind of bemoan this. Leave it to human beings to turn something great into something like a cesspool. Like the internet is such a mixed bag. And it seems like everyone has a platform now. Like everyone has a podcast with a plant sitting in the corner, and like everybody's trying to be Joe Rogan of something, and it's like, you know what? It's nothing special anymore. That's why we had PBS, and that's why we had television. That's why we have live concerts. That's why I still think the cream rises to the top no matter what, but you know, there's too much of this like information, and it's not, very little of it's good coming at us nonstop. So I would recommend maybe try to take a digital break, you know, from time to time, and see how your life improves. It will. When you're living through these devices, that's not life. And I'm hopelessly addicted to my cell phone, and I want out of it. I do. So I would. Here's something that's out of left field. This bit of advice. I'm not just going to say practice hard, study, do everything you can to the nth degree. Have a hobby outside of music. Have something you love to do. I don't care if it's rebuilding motorcycles. That's what I got into. I don't care if it's genealogy. I do that too. I have a number of weird things that I like to do that keep me grounded, keep me sane, keep me, if you will, based. You know, like I have something. I know you're cringing at an old man. Don't say that. My daughter would be like, Dad, stop. And I mean, it will. There's so much cross-pollination among these disciplines. Like rebuilding, just like an air filter housing for my. I've got what they call a rat bike. You know, it's a old Honda Shadow with a million other parts, and it's got all modifications and super loud exhaust, and it's really fun. I love this bike. But like rebuilding this little piece of the motorcycle has made me think about my technique and how I want to refine that. So if you have like a foil, something to compare it with, and you're not just a one-trick pony, that is worth its weight in gold, I think, in your life. To have, and this is good advice for everybody, is to have a pursuit, an avocation. People always say, oh, I'm so lucky that my hobby is the way I make my living. It's like, yeah, until it isn't. Until you realize, oh, I gotta go practice my cello. It's like, you know, if you have another hobby, you're gonna have a lot more enthusiasm for what you do for a living. I guarantee it. That's solid advice. Yeah. So with that, I guess we're done.
All right.